you're gonna look great. But if you wanna stay in shape, well, you better hit the Gym Wits.
That's right, man. Tell 'em.
Welcome to the Gym Wits podcast. I'm Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, a.k.a. Chef Sonic.
And we are the Gym Wits. So it's been a few weeks now, and you've been on your quest to get ripped. We did a podcast on that. I created the workout. I know you had some issues with the workout, so maybe we could talk about that too. But how's it been going so far?
Really well. I didn't have really any issues with it, except that I thought it was just too difficult to jump into. Like the first day, it was an insane amount of stuff, both squats and deadlifts, bench press. It was like just so much. My body could not do that just jumping in, especially with the amount of, like, I had to do 6 sets of deadlifts, right? Yeah. It was just too much for the first day.
So you hadn't been lifting that much?
I hadn't been lifting at all.
Really? All right, okay.
It was just, but I did a lot. Like I did 5 out of 8 exercises with a heavy weight and all the sets.
Okay, good.
And I followed it, and it was just great. It was the first time ever that I had a plan.
Yeah, really.
That I had an actual sheet. The second workout was also really intense, but
this workout's also if you have the app, it's downloadable as a PDF, so you can see this crazy workout that Justin has. If you have the Gym Wits app on iOS, it's right there downloadable as a PDF.
So for the second. The second workout, which the first one was more about back, legs, and chest. Yeah. The second one was more shoulders and arms. Yeah. Shoulders and arms, and a little bit of back. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, why would you want to do the 3 biggest, chest, back, and legs in one day? Why didn't you want to spread them out?
Honestly, it's a good question. I personally have found, and again, this isn't backed by science, it might be more effective to actually split them up a little bit, but I like that day as your like kind of
crazy
you split
day.
Your days, in a sense. When we talked about periodization a little bit, and then you get into like the micro scale level, your week to week workout, and you're gonna have your intense workout during the week, your hardest workout, then you have like your B level. And then sometimes like you have your C level workout, like you have that extra day that you work out where you just want to get in. So I like, those are all like, it's for strength building. Those are all A level exercises. So if you want to build strength right now for what you're doing, for what I kind of had in mind for you, I felt like that I wanted to put those on the same day. So like once you get into your more like size building phase of your workout, it'll be split differently. But for that, I personally have found it effective to kind of, that's your strength day. That's your A day. That's the day where you're going to go in. And you've been doing this long enough that you can do that. If it was somebody brand new, it might be a little bit different. Or someone who's very little experience lifting weights or moderate experience, I might do something different. But for you, I wanted to put those all in that one day because that's like your A day. Again, it's not the best way to go about it. I found that to be
sense.
When I lifted weights, it was successful for me.
But that A day happens 2 days a week.
It does happen 2 days a week. So
we're supposed to,
because like I said, that the focus for you right now is just building strength. So so that's it. So that's kind of the reason behind it. But again, it's not set in stone, and everyone's different. But if it works for you, it works for you. Cool. I do think probably a little ambitious for the first week, but hey.
But I'll build up to it.
Yeah.
Really, just the difficulty is just having to do the squats and the deadlifts in the same day. That's just because the deadlifts are so draining. Yeah. And then to have to go through all that and then do the squats, it might be. But I have to build up to it. Like part of it is building up to it. The second day wasn't as difficult. There was 10 There's actually more exercises. The second day, although they're not quite as intense. Yeah. And I was able to got through 8 of those. Yeah. So it was pretty good.
And you did your cardio day? Did you?
I didn't have a chance to. Okay. I didn't have a chance to. I just been so busy, but I got those workouts in. Yeah. Plus, I'm just trying to get it to the schedule. Yeah. So I'm doing the best I can with the schedule.
How's your consistency been?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Like I've been going either every day or every other day. Yeah. So it's been pretty solid. There has been a side effect. So the first thing with the diet was that I was not supposed to eat dessert or only once a week. Yeah. And I've held true.
You did? Okay.
Or you know what? For the most part, I've had one real dessert, and then maybe the other days I had a tiny bit. No. But no, it was legit.
Turkey.
It was legit, but no. But when I say a tiny bit, I really was. It was like a spoon, like a really small amount. So it wasn't a full dessert. It was a really tiny bit.
Nope, you gotta go cold turkey for that, except for that one day.
And that was really only once where I did
okay.
that. So it wasn't bad. Now there has been a result, a side effect, and my appetite, which Ryan could tell you has always been on the larger side. Recently, I talked about how I used to eat I don't eat as much as I used to.
Mm-hmm.
My appetite just isn't the same. It has shot up.
Okay.
My appetite is now, I'm quite hungry, and I can eat tremendous portions now. So
that's a common response to like a weight training program. So it's just shocking that it was so quick, that just a week.
Yeah, just
week and a
as
half,
soon
2
as I
weeks
started,
into
I
it,
felt it.
Wow.
And also cravings for things. Like I feel like I want to. I'm not a big meat eater in general. It was very rare that I would eat cheeseburgers and stuff like that. But now all I want to eat is cheeseburgers.
Wow.
Like I want to eat like beef. I want to eat cheeseburgers. So it's crazy.
Went to there's a Brazilian steakhouse, not the one that we go to in the city, but there was one in Queens that I went to that's pretty good. Should have come.
Interesting.
But all right, interesting.
Now,
So
is that bad that I want to eat? Now, the thing is, I haven't eaten unhealthy.
Yeah.
The only thing that maybe I've eaten that was a little unhealthy was some French fries that came with the
Okay.
cheeseburger. But nothing else was really unhealthy. I still stuck away from any fried food. And dessert and stuff like
some
that.
would argue that the cheeseburger itself is not the healthiest thing in the world.
Is it though? Like as my meal?
It's not the healthiest meal
Certainly
in the
not.
world.
But
it's not the most balanced meal in the world. But you're lifting weights.
Well, here's another thing.
Yeah.
I have a very balanced meal. I eat lots of fruits and vegetables every day.
Okay.
I force myself to. So while yes, I'll eat the cheeseburger throughout the day, I've also eaten a good amount of fruits and vegetables.
All right. So I mean, you're going to be hungry, and that's a common response
now.
to the heavy lifting. I think the challenge is to fight any bad cravings, like and also to be reasonable.
I haven't had cravings for sweets as much.
Okay, that's good.
Might also be due to other social aspects of life.
Yeah.
And that's actually a really interesting thing that we might want to have a podcast on, how things that happen in life, your social interactions, may affect your food cravings.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, that's good. So your workout so far so good. We have a friend or I have a friend, Misha, you've met, who's a listener of the podcast.
Yeah.
And
Misha.
he liked that episode where we started your workout.
Okay. And
And he had mentioned like starting some kind of a competition because he's had a hard time getting back to exercise himself. So maybe we'll get some. So initially it was like, okay, well maybe I'll get you to compete with him, see who can get into the gym, because he's been saying it for the longest time. And I've not seen him in a while. But then maybe we'll do a larger like gym wits fitness comp. We just have to.
Well,
figure out
remember
how to work that out.
our friends in Astoria.
The Astoria gut off.
They had
Yep.
did the Astoria gut off, and that was very successful for people in Astoria to lose weight and that sort of stuff. And that was centered more around pure size loss.
I think it was just pure weight loss.
Losing your gut and really losing the size
Yeah.
of your gut, which could be very good in some ways.
Yeah.
I think we would want to do it as a fitness competition, and now not like a CrossFit competition where how many burpees can you do, how much weight can you lift. I think we would want to do it in relation to where similar to the gut off. I love the concept of the gut off in that it's not about who is the thinnest, it's about who progressed the most. And so I would like to do something who would progress the most. So we would have to analyze our contestants. See, that's the tricky part, because with a gut off, you can just measure someone. For anyone who wants to compete in this, I guess the gym was fitness contest, whatever we would call it, we would have to assess everyone's fitness level to some degree and then assess where they are. But I think it's a wonderful idea. It's a challenge, but I think it's a wonderful idea for a competition. And I think that especially for people that are, quote unquote out of shape, where they haven't been in it. But here's the tricky thing, that you might get people that are absolute beginners just looking to get into it. And you might get people that have been out of it for a while, but because they've done fitness in the past, they just naturally are stronger, because you don't completely lose all your muscle mass. If you once were able to lift a lot of weight, you're still going to be able to lift some, and especially more than someone who has never lifted any
What if it's a
weights
different
before.
criteria altogether? So one of the things one of the problems with fitness competitions, whether it's like in the workplace or like the Body for Life type of thing, or even like anything where the focus is all right, results, is that people will stick to it for the length of the competition, but then there's no motivation when the competition ends, so it's all over. So what if it's more about just getting to the gym or consistency, or finding other kind of parameters?
That could be good too. That could be part of it too. But then it's still going to end at some point.
Yeah, you're right. Well,
you can do a dual competition. You can do the initial competition for who progresses the most, and then you can have a competition afterwards who sticks with it.
What if it's like we have like
a never-ending competition?
What if we have what if there's like a heavyweight champion, like a championship, right? And so I mean, I have no idea how we'd actually measure this because we don't have access to how often people are going to the gym. But you almost feel like whoever's the most consistent is the champion, and then if somebody becomes more consistent, that person takes the title.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
Then we just go down.
I don't think it has to be. I know we have this desire to make sure everyone's healthy and happy. I think at some point we'd have to draw the line. I think starting, just getting people into it, because we know people are going to drop off. But let's say we do this competition, 100 people enter, and 40 of them. So all of them get into better shape. That's just good. Mm-hmm. Now a lot of people may be educated for the future and they may drop off after the competition ends. Mm-hmm. But maybe 40 people stick with it. Yeah. That's a victory. Yeah. That's great. It's great if one person sticks with it. Or maybe 40 people stick with it. 30 people still do it, but just less. That's still better than nothing. Yeah. 30 people completely stop, but maybe 8 of those in the future get back into it in some capacity, and because they now have new education, new knowledge and experience, they're able to. So if it benefits people in that regard, right, I think that would be fantastic. So it's definitely something we're going to look into, the Gymwits Fitness Competition.
Yeah. All right. Well, so I guess on to today's subject, or to today's talk, it'll be a pretty short episode. I had a friend who asked, basically just getting into personal training and wanted some tips.
Feels like everyone. You ever notice this? Yeah. It feels like so many young people that have career issues, not necessarily bad career issues, but that may want to change jobs, or may want to take a break from their job, or might want to do something after they retire. It seems everyone wants to go into physical training, personal training. They all think that it's because they think it's easy, or maybe they have a passion for it, so they think that they can.
Well, I'll tell you from experience.
But doesn't it seem like so many people toy with that idea of being a personal trainer?
People. So, you said young people, and it's not just young and
okay,
old.
I'm sorry. Of people of all ages.
Personal training is one of those. I've seen this happen a lot, where friends who see that, because you will have friends that are trainers that are successful and do well. And it doesn't appear that you're doing that much. I mean, I think people now know that not all. I mean, at the end of the day, we've talked about this before, that the regulation in training is not that significant. It's pretty easy to become a certified personal trainer. Barrier to entry is very low. So in that way, it's an easy profession to get into. Very easy to get into. And then most people kind of see it as, oh, well, what's he doing? He's just taking people through workouts, and they kind of are hanging out and having a good time. Not having a good time, but they seem to be engaging with somebody. They're personable, blah blah blah. So there tends to be some misconceptions about kind of the how easy personal training is.
And also, if people have a passion for fitness, they're
exactly. If you have a passion for fitness, it's like, oh, great, I can. No, I've seen the other end where people have no passion for fitness, but they see, oh, that seems easy enough. And I've seen people start training under those conditions. It usually doesn't work out well. Like, you usually have to have some level of passion for fitness and exercise.
Of course. How could you teach anything that you don't have a passion for?
Yeah, well, people do, but it's very hard with training for a number of reasons. I mean, I know people that get into professions that they don't love, but because it's going to make them money. But there's kind of a structure, or
when you have to teach or instruct, when other people, you're responsible for other people's well-being.
I think
totally different story.
The difference being, let's say,
you might hate trading stocks, or you might hate doing finance work, but you're responsible for yourself. You do your job and go home.
Yeah, well,
right?
The difference
like personal
being
training. It's just a
the
different
process.
Thing. It's like teaching guitar. Like, someone wanted to learn guitar so that they could teach guitar, even though they don't like playing it. Seems weird to me.
Yeah, well, but the difference being, if you think you can make money, lots of people do things that they're not passionate about, or have jobs that they're not passionate about. I think the difference with training is there's no real path, like or standard path, and you're so responsible for yourself that it's a hard career to get into unless you're passionate about it, because it can be very frustrating, and especially in the beginning. So anyway, a couple of people that we've done a couple of episodes dealing with some secrets, or not secrets, but tips for personal training. We talked about that Cracked article, which dealt with personal training secrets or secrets to the gym. We did an episode where we talked a little bit about that, which is up to 1,700,000 viewers for that Cracked article, which is pretty cool. And then we've also talked a bit on, like tips for personal trainers. Anyway, I had a friend who's new personal trainer and wanted some tips. So I'm going to give some kind of tips on what to expect or what you can do to kind of advance your career if you're a brand new trainer or you're thinking about getting into personal training. And these are kind of things that not your standard things. So I think when you get into a personal training program or when you get hired, you're going to naturally hear certain things that I'm not going to get into, because you're going to hear that when you get into the business. So I'm going to just wanted to go over some things that maybe you wouldn't think of, and ways to approach the business that might help. And some of these will apply to any field, especially where you're responsible for yourself and you're responsible for your own business.
I'm a little curious now, because I thought I knew a good bit about personal training, even though I'm not one, but just from hanging out with you and seeing stuff. So I'm curious. All right. So what are some of these?
Again, a lot of these are very. So the first one is the best piece of advice I've gotten as far as business as a trainer, and this applies to any field. Okay. So I guess to give a little bit of background on this, and again, any field where you're running your own business, you're a salesman. No matter how much you want to get around it, no matter how passionate you are about whatever you're doing, that doesn't change the fact that you're in sales. We've talked about it before on the podcast. Anytime we've talked about personal training, that's one of the hardest parts about training, because for a lot of people, they don't feel like natural salespeople. I don't like to say I'm a salesman, but at the end of the day, that's what you do. You're trying to sell a service, and for most places, a significant amount of money. So you've got to get somebody to part with a significant amount of money to do something that they could do on their own. Whether or not it would be as effective, they could still do that on their own. It's not like you're paying somebody to,
So now, what about this? What about people who are salesmen who think, well, I'm a salesman, I should be good at this?
Hey, sure. Honestly,
it's not a bad way of thinking, right?
Again, we're not going to get too much into that, but like some of the best people or the most successful trainers I know are great salesmen, but terrible trainers, or just mediocre trainers
that
have no
to be
knowledge.
In almost everything in life, right? So, people that are good at selling, whether they're good at selling themselves, selling their service. It's true. It's an important
skill. I know some
skill.
people who are passionate about fitness, knowledgeable, who aren't that as successful as they could be or should be, because they don't have that kind of sales acumen. So now, what the problem with when you think sales is, I got to make the sale. And again, this is going to be a course on sales, but probably the best piece of advice anyone gave me was about planting seeds, And so the idea that, especially if you're in a gym setting, which, I recommend anybody start at a gym. So actually, I'm going to take a step back and give a first piece of advice before planting seeds is start at a gym.
Get some legit experience.
You're going to meet people, and this is where I know people who, and I've been in and out of gyms in my life. There have been times where I didn't work at any gyms, then times where I worked at 3 or 4 different gyms. And you'll meet people who run their own business, especially in New York, who make a lot of money. So you can make a lot of money if you do your own thing and you go to people's apartments, and there's a stress that comes with that. Because I'd started at gyms, and I went into doing just home training like that, running my own business. And then I actually ended up going back to the gym and doing less of the home training, because for me, the problem with doing the home training is you're all over the place, running all over the place, and there's stress that comes with that. And being at a gym where you make less money, at least you have a home base and you're in one place. And I actually found that as I got older, I valued the time that I lost traveling around the city. I valued that more than the extra money that I made. So that's why I kind of decided I'd rather be at a place and have that kind of home base. I still have clients outside, but I'd much rather have one place where I do 90% or 80% of my sessions.
Okay, so that's for you, though.
Yeah, for
some
me
people
personally.
might like
But no matter
all
who
over.
you are, I hear a lot of people are like, they want to get right into that. They want to do home training. And the problem is, you lose the connection with other people. So when you're starting training, there's a wealth of knowledge to gain from other trainers, whether it's about training or about the business or about just what to expect. And so if you go into it with the idea, I'm going to do my own business right away, you're going to lose out on that. And there's some important things that you're just not going to get from any certification program or any podcast, or the things that you're going to learn that you need to be in a gym for. So I would recommend any trainer start in a gym where you get to meet people, you meet other trainers. There are going to be people, they're regulars at the gym who just are going to know a lot. You know, there's and you also get the chance to work with a wide variety of different clients, and hopefully you get to interact with people and meet people and kind of make mistakes and mess up and do things that you it's going to be much harder to do on your own.
You know
So
what it reminds me of, it's so similar.
yeah,
People who want to record music or be a producer, and they've never really played.
yeah,
They've never been in a band. They've never played out.
Yeah.
They've never done a circuit, done a tour. So they don't really get the concept of performing a song, of what it means to touch people with your art. They don't really get what people might enjoy or the interaction with other people. They think theoretically, oh, well, maybe I know some theory. Maybe I know how to use a computer program. I know how to make sounds put together. Right, so I should be able to, by that idea, I should be able to just write a song and put it together.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, sort of, but it always comes out not being perfect. Why? Because
Yeah.
they don't have that field experience.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you mean so you think that field experience is very important?
yeah, and just engaging in a dialogue with
Yeah.
other trainers, and again, there are people that you're going to learn from.
Sure.
That it's invaluable as a new trainer if you really want to learn about it, because you can learn as much as you can from books and everything, but interacting with people, you're going to get things from the trainer who knows the least or you think knows the least. Is going to share something that's going to help you,
little tidbit,
and then there's going to
yeah.
be a couple people who have so much experience that you can take from them. So definitely
Even learning what not to do.
Yeah.
As well. Can help,
Absolutely.
either by seeing other
yeah.
people do things messing up, or
Watching-
you messing up in regards could teach you something.
Yeah, so definitely I would say start at a gym. So that would be kind of first. Now back to planting seeds. So what I mean by planting seeds is a common thing that people think when they want to sell, and a lot of gyms will teach this as like a technique. Is you meet somebody, they're doing the common scenario is like somebody's doing an exercise wrong. So you go up to them and you explain, hi, I'm Ryan, and you explain to them, what they're doing wrong and how they fix it, and it's like, oh well, maybe we could do a session. You kind of work your way into talking them into a session. I'm not very good at that, but they'll
slimy.
teach you a way to do it really in a sly manner that you're able to get a client. And to me, that's short-sighted, because if you take that approach, what happens is often the person can be standoffish to begin with, because they're expecting you to try to sell them at a lot of gyms, because there's a lot of pressure on trainers, and the hard sell is a big thing for them. So people are standoffish to begin with, and then if they have to say no, or I'm not interested, or maybe later, maybe they're a little passive, so they're like, oh, I'm not right now, but maybe in a week. They create some tension, and for the client, it makes them a little worried, like, oh crap, am I going to see that person? Or I got to avoid them? What if they ask me? There's a bit of anxiety that comes with the person.
Yeah.
And as a trainer, you got to worry about asking them again, and so by planting seeds, that interaction can happen the same, but just leave out the part of, just get to know them. Let them know that you're there. You can help them. Give them pieces of advice. Help them out. Let them know, kind of drop that wall so that they know that you're someone that they can approach. And maybe they're not interested in training right now, but if in 6 months or 8 months or a year, they are interested in training, and they trust you and they like you, and you've developed a relationship and a rapport, then that person is going to come to you. And if you do that with enough people, that's where the planting seeds. You just plant it and you let it grow itself organically.
So
and
funny, yeah.
that's what worked really well. There are two things that worked really well for me initially. That was one. It's much more long term, because you plant it, and it might grow a year or 2 years down the line. I've had people who've contacted me.
Yep.
Someone I met 6 years ago who's like,
Yep.
we worked out, or we met, or you were at this gym or whatever. So
they remember you in a positive
exactly.
way.
So if your interaction with them is one where they have to tell you no, and again, you're gonna hear all these weird sales techniques where you get them, like, I think it's like yes momentum or whatever. You get them to keep saying yes to different stuff, and then you finally ask them, like, to train with you. They're all kind of cool.
I know they tried that.
Weird
They tried
sales
that on me at Equinox.
yeah. So just the idea being is just plant the seed, let it go, but then you've developed a relationship with somebody who will come to you. And again, they'll ask you questions, or if they want to refer somebody, they'll refer someone to you.
Sure,
and
that happens too.
I'm at the point now where I have to turn down a lot of business, and it's a very good position to be in as a trainer. But it's because of that, because I'm getting people that are coming to me who've known me for months, who've never trained with me, or for years, or who I worked with a long time ago, or who have my information from somebody else, because I've developed a relationship where everything has been positive. And even when I stop working with somebody for whatever reason, there's not a hard sell. If someone's like, I need to stop working out for whatever reason, it's like, great, keep in touch. If you need me, shoot me an email or talk to me or give me a call. Now,
I'm really gonna say that it works.
Yeah.
And not even in the training, because I don't work in the training field. I'm a freelance musician.
Yeah.
And recently, or just for last few years, I've been doing very similar things.
Yeah.
Whether I meet people at a club, at a concert, whether people give me a call
Yeah.
that may be curious. They don't know if they want to do anything yet, so they're just asking questions. For me, I'll talk about the process. I'll talk
Yeah.
about what I do. My sales will be the last thing.
Yeah.
Right? And even at that, I don't sell. And you want to know who I learned a very valuable thing that has worked for me? Maybe it doesn't work for everyone. From our kickboxing instructor, Jeremy. He said something that resonated with me.
What?
And I've used it ever since. I learned something as a freelance musician from a personal trainer.
Yeah.
And he said, the first session is always on me.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I believe that if you're going to work with me, if you're going to commit, it's a big deal. It's something that I don't take for granted. I care that you're working with me, and I want to give you the best. And you're now have decided that I am someone that you are willing to pay for my service. So when you are making that decision, I don't want you to have to worry about being charged for the first one. I want you to be free in thinking, is this who you want to work with? And I have done that with all of my clients. I say, you know what, the first session is on me because I don't want you thinking about that. I don't want you worrying about that. I just want us to focus on what we're doing.
Yeah.
And almost always the person will say, that's great, and I'll always get the call back.
Yeah.
And almost always, whatever my rate is, which I always believe, and I'm sure you're going to get to this too, to a reasonable rate. I know that, and this is for me with integrity. Yes, someone might be wealthy and have a lot of money. For me, just because someone's wealthy doesn't mean you price gouge.
Yeah.
Like people say, oh, what does it matter? This person could easily pay $200 an hour, $300 an hour. Well, that's fine. But, if that's, if you're really worth that, I know it's that's a tough thing to say. Of course you're worth that. Of course you're worth the money that you charge. But I just don't feel comfortable in doing that. Like me, for me, if I charge, $100 to $150 an hour for my service, that's what I charge, right? That's what I charge. I'm not just because someone has a lot of money, am I going to up my rate to $300 an hour, right? If that's what my rate is in general, because just through the way of business, and maybe I'm dealing with, wealthier clientele or record labels or whatever it is, and that's what I charge. That's what I charge. Mm-hmm. But I'm never going to just change my price. I that's what I believe in. I'm sure you'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit. So the extension on that actually is you can also plant seeds with other trainers. So if you build a rapport with other trainers, there's a potential to get and give business back with those other trainers. So I didn't have this on my list, but it's another thing. It's if you build a relationship with somebody and they can't, like I've had this happen recently where I can't take on these clients, I need to send them to somebody I trust. So people that I built relationships with, I can send the clients to them. And I've had that happen to me as well in the past, where somebody can't take a client for whatever reason, they send them to me. Or if they're leaving a gym, so that's another important place to plant seeds. Is a lot of places almost make it seem as if the other trainers are your competition, and in a weird way they are, but they shouldn't be. And you should have a relationship with them where they trust you, because if they trust you, they'll send clients to you. Or
and
maybe
in turn will send clients. I found that. I found something interesting called the one good deed. Mm-hmm. By doing one good deed for someone, whether if you want to think about it in a selfish fashion by saying, hey, by doing something for someone else, it's going to come back, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to do it for selfish reasons, right? I don't like to do it. I like to do it because I like to do things for other people. Yeah. Maybe getting one person work, getting a call to one person, just doing something for someone. I like doing it just in general, but I found that the one good deed, who are they going to think of? Like, let's say a trainer, you send one trainer client that you can't train. They're going to call you. Yeah. You're going to be first on their mind. And if they don't, that's fine. You've still done a good service for someone else, for two people. You've helped out the client by finding them a trainer, and you've helped out the trainer. That's good enough as it is. Yeah. But then who are they going to think of?
Yeah.
I think of you. Both of them. The client might think of you, or the trainer might
Yeah.
think of
Well,
you.
there's a couple clients who I couldn't take. I had to give them to somebody, and one of the people that I gave them to was somebody who sends clients or sends people to my classes all the time, which actually is a good segue into my next thing. But I teach a lot of group fitness classes, and they would anytime he works with somebody, what he does is he tells them, all right, great, working with me is great, but I want you to take these classes, and he'll send them to my classes. So he's always someone I think of as, well, he trusts me, trusts the way I teach, and he sends people to me. He's not like intimidated, or because some people, like, there's, again, people can get a little standoffish, a little not, just in general, you're like, well, you're my competition, but he sends them to my classes. And so at this particular place, like, it's the first person I think of, oh, well, I gotta say, I'm going to send the client to him because I'm paying him back. Now, so that does segue into my next thing, which is group exercise can be your friend. So if you're a personal trainer,
any group, anything, just you get exposed to people.
Exactly. So I know so many trainers that I'll say, hey, do you do any group exercise? And it's like, no, I don't know, I wouldn't be good for it. And I'm a good example of why it can work for you, because I'm not your standard group X instructor. I'm not like a drill sergeant. I'm not loud. I'm not the most extroverted person in the world. And when I teach, I'm not the type that's running all over the place. But you don't have to. You can create your own niche. If you can find a way to make your classes work for you, for me, I'm not going to be the loudest person. I'm not going to be yelling encouragement to everybody. But it's from the content of my classes are good. So my classes, for the most part, are popular. I've had things that have fizzled out. I definitely am not polarizing, but there are definitely places I've taught where people just didn't take to my classes. But then there are places I teach where,
Speaking
it's
of
40 people.
Just as a sort of a sidebar, what do you do if one of your gym goers goes up to you and says, "Hey, you should do more. You should be more loud, or you should do this." What do you say
God,
when
into a whole this could be a podcast
because that's
in its own. All right.
That happens. I'm sure this must have happened, right?
Oh yeah, it happens all the time. I'm at a point now, again, this is for anybody. This kind of applies to anybody, no matter what your position you're in. It's like, kind of, how emboldened are you to act a certain way? So for me, I'm as busy as I want to be, maybe a little busier, which is important for training. Obviously, I could always take more business, but I also, for me, I place high value on not having stress. Like, my stress comes from working too many hours. So when I teach class, I'm at a point now where I'm not going to teach a class I don't want to teach. I'm not going to work with a client I don't want to work with. And when I say I'm not going to teach a class I don't want to teach, I'm not going to teach a class in a way that I don't want to teach. And I've earned that ability. Sure. Now, if I was struggling to teach classes and I'm struggling to get clients, obviously you can't be that picky, but I'm fortunate I can be that picky.
Well, you've earned it.
Yeah. So I'll listen to anybody. If someone has a legitimate suggestion, you're not doing this right, you're not doing that right, I'm totally open to listening. But if it's about, some people, like one person, I don't do things with music, right? I've done it before. I hate it. I used to do a cardio kickboxing class and I had to do it with music. I hated it. It makes me anxious. I don't want that anxiety. So someone the other day was like, oh, well, I think that this person's really annoying. Oh, I kind of hope they're a podcast listener so that they know that how annoying they are to me, because they actually do create anxiety when they're in my presence in this class. But anyway, she's like, I think that you should another aside. Can go way deep. This person, my first day teaching this class, so I took over for a guy that was really popular. Come in, first day I teach the class, everyone's like, great, good job. That was really good. They loved their previous instructor, so I had big shoes to fill. And she comes up to me, great class, but now let me give you some constructive criticism. And then she spends the next 10 minutes telling me what I did wrong. And for the last 6 years that I've been teaching this class, for a while, she would always try to give me a hard time about stuff. And I finally got to the point where I realized, because I'm a nice guy, so I'll respond. If you tell me something, I'm going to try to engage. But I just got to the point where I would just ignore her, basically. She would say something, it would just go through one ear out the other. Or she'd ask me something or say something, I just did be completely dismissive.
An interesting type of
and
person.
then once
always trying to give constructive criticism.
Once she realized that I was not having it, and I think I showed that I did not like her. She stopped it, and so she's been much, much nicer lately. She's been very complimentary and has not been try to correct things in a while. But the last thing she did try to correct, she's like, I think that you should start, doing things to music. And I was like, I said, I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to think about music. I don't want to think about applying it to music. That's not the way I teach. And she's like, but I think the members would like it. And I was like, well, you know what? There are 50 classes at this gym. If the members want somebody to go with music, they can find somebody else and not me. So to kind of answer your question now, when somebody does, if someone has something constructive to say, like, let's see, okay, I have somebody who, she felt like there was a class I was teaching, and she had taken another class that was more cardio oriented, and this particular class is more strength oriented, like the title of the class. But she was like, "Is there any way we can incorporate more cardio? I really love the way you do the other class, but I feel like maybe we're doing a little too much weights, and I'm not getting my heart rate up as much." And I was like, "All right, sure, I'll add. That's fair." Perfectly fine. So, if it's something like that, I'm fine. But if it's something like someone says to me, can you be more, show more energy or bounce around more, yell, I'm not going to do it. That's how I teach.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, I'm fine. Even if it's a manager somewhere, again, I'm not, like, I've had places where I've lost classes because I'm just not, I don't, like, that group doesn't like the way I teach. And I'm fine with that. Like, I have thick skin. So if I'm not good for the group, I'm not good for the group. So,
and I think it's okay to stick up for yourself.
So,
this is the way I'm always open to constructive criticism. I like to vary things up, but there is still a way that I do things.
Yeah, exactly.
I've gotten to where I am based on the way that I do it.
Yeah, and exactly.
Right?
And so that's how I feel, as I'll build.
And have conviction with that.
So that's how I am. So, so to answer your question, when I do get that, I tend to, if it's something that's going to change the way I teach, I'm just not gonna do it, because I have my way, and it's popular where it's popular, and it's not popular where it's not popular, and I just don't need to deal with the places where it's not popular, and that's just how it is. So I think that kind of, to answer your question, but in general, group exercise, to get back to the main subject, which you were on maybe 10 minutes ago, group X is your friend, and I'm always surprised at trainers that don't want to get into it, because the thing with group exercise, from a financial standpoint, so again, I told you that I wanted things more stable. So Group X helps stability-wise, because I know it's like a salary. I know how many classes I have per week. So you don't make as much as one-on-one training, but you're set in stone as far as the amount of classes.
And they're always there.
They're always there. So,
and you don't have to call and schedule it yourself.
You don't. But part of it is, if you have to get, like, if I'm going on vacation,
you have to get a sub.
Yeah, you have to get a sub. So that's the only thing. But so the thing, though, is, again, it opens you up to so many people.
Sure.
That you have a mass of people that are potential clients at that point.
Clients,
and
potential references,
they trust you,
or who knows what else in life. Just good things.
Yeah.
You might meet someone who is a massage therapist, and this person winds up helping you in one way or another.
So it opens you up to a population that wouldn't otherwise know you, and they trust you, and people are maybe even a little too trusting, as another thing we'll get into a little bit later. People a little too trusting with your opinion on things, which can be a bad thing. But you have a whole group of people that trust you, and that are talking about you, and that are potential clients, whether they're clients for you or potential referrals. I can tell you so many people that I've gotten as clients, and then sometimes it's just one-off things. It's like, hey, I want to do 5 sessions, I want to do a couple sessions, but it adds up.
Sure,
so
that's great.
If you're a trainer, Group X is good, and you just have to kind of find what works for you. If you're very extroverted and dynamic, it's a little bit easier, because you can engage a little bit more. For me, it's a little bit harder. I had to really, I got lucky when my first Group X class was at a college. So, when you're teaching students, like, students don't know they don't know what a good exercise class is from a bad exercise class. So I got kind of lucky, because I was terrible. Like, my classes were awful. Like, if I went to one of my classes, I was terrible. But it was at a gym. They didn't know any better. I mean, at a school, so they didn't know any better. If I'd started at a gym, it might have been a bit of a different story. But you find what works for you and go with it. What your style or your type of class, and it can be a huge benefit as a trainer. So that's one thing I would say, is if you're getting into training, try to get into Group X as quickly as you can. And the barrier to entry for Group X is not that high. Even the actual testing process is probably a little bit easier than personal training, but you can get by as a group exercise instructor with a personal trainer certification. So, okay, so that's it. The next piece of advice, which again I kind of talked about, is remember, you're not a medical professional. So one of the biggest mistakes all trainers make, and whether they're newer or older, is you got to find the line between what am I doing that's helping their performance and their fitness and their recovery, and what am I doing that's affecting their medical things. So we're not doctors, we're not physical therapists, so you have to know where the line is. You're not diagnosing injuries. If somebody says they have a problem, a pain, or an injury, you can't tell them, unless you're qualified, unless you happen to be a trainer and a PT or a trainer and a doctor, like you're not qualified to say, oh, well, that's the injury or this is what's wrong with you. You can say, you maybe like in some cases I've been around long enough that I can say, okay, it sounds like this, but I don't know, and I'm not going to treat that, and and you should see it. You should see a doctor, and especially don't try to treat injuries. If somebody comes to you with I strained my calf or whatever, don't start giving them treatments. That's even worse. So
And
I
similarly,
think
and what about giving nutritional advice?
same thing. We've talked about that before. Like you again, unless you're a registered dietitian, the nutritional advice has to be very vague and very, 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 very like kind of basic common sense. That it really can't go much further than that. Again, you build relationships with clients, and that's a part of it. That sometimes you'll share more than you probably should professionally, but that's kind of a case-by-case thing. And again, you got to be careful because you don't want to give advice that is going to end up with somebody hurt. And so especially when it comes to medical stuff, you really want to be careful where that line is, where, the line between performance and dealing with, in medical issues, there is a fine line there, and you want to be careful with that.
Now, what about logistical issues?
What do you mean?
Such as people who cancel, people who are always asking you to...
great.
Different time.
Okay,
can you do this? Can you do this on my schedule?
So this fits into what I call I started
this is
with
a big part of it that people don't think about.
I started with price integrity, but I kind of changed it to kind of price and schedule integrity. So when you were talking about your the way you charge, it goes both ways. So unless if you work at a gym, it's easy because at a gym you're stuck with what the gym charges. But even a gym, some gyms charge like they have tiers, and the tiers are based on different levels that you're at and whatever. But whatever the case is, if you're working on your own or if you're able to set your own prices, you want to try to keep that across the board in both ways. So don't lower your price, because that looks bad for you. If you're going to lower your price, one thing if you're specifically saying I'm running a sale on my services, or I offer a discount for whatever, there's got to be a reason.
Working something out.
Yeah,
with someone.
But
for
don't
some
just
reason.
lower your rate for like, oh well, that like, I'm working in Brooklyn, so I got to charge less here. I'm working on the Upper East Side. Like, try to maintain price integrity. It looks, I'll give you an example of why it looks bad. I was at a gym with somebody who did that. He charged different rates for what he think he could get. But then he had two people who were talking to each other who were clients of his who were both paying wildly different rates to him. So it looks bad for both people. Obviously, the person paying the lower rate is getting the better end of the deal. Now, the one caveat I'll say is I try to maintain kind of I for me as a trainer, I feel like somebody who's working with me a long time is committed to me and they're loyal to me. So I try not to raise their rates as much as I can afford to. So, at some point, like if I'm working with somebody I started, train, like there are a couple people I trained when I started, and you're going to have to increase the rates a little bit. But I do try to maintain kind of the rates of my, like the integrity of my rates. And try to be loyal to my clients. So if I raise my rates, I try to keep clients at their old rates.
And of course, we're talking about being reasonable. If someone trains with you 5 days a week, you might be inclined to knock off a few dollars.
No, so
right,
that's
as
a
opposed
difference,
to one
though.
person.
In general,
that's all reasonable.
In general, with training,
reasonable
you're going to
stuff.
offer a discount for more. Like if someone buys a bigger package, there is a discount. So we're when if you're doing discounts based on packages or a discount based on the amount of times per week, that's different. But if you're just changing your rates just to change your rates because you can get
this person won't buy
it's not going to work. I mean, it might work, but it looks bad for you. And again, either up or down, you want to try to maintain your rates for what they are. And again, if you want to be loyal to people and keep them at their old rates, great. If you want to increase their rates, you can do that too. Either way, it's fine. But you want to try to maintain professionalism because it's a job where you are your own business, whether you're at a gym or not. So you have to try to run it like you're running a business. And it doesn't always work. I'm not perfect at it. I've not been perfect at it myself. So
if you're reasonable.
But you want to try to be reasonable. Now, the other part then we talked about is schedule integrity. That's where I've had a hard time over the years.
Especially in this new world where everyone's busy and everyone wants
everyone
to do
should have
their time.
You should have a cancellation policy. If you're at a gym, it's a little bit easier because they have their policy. Sometimes it's 12 hours. Sometimes it's 24. But your time is valuable. So if people keep canceling on you, you charge them. You can't. I know people like you feel bad. Oh, well, they paid for like if someone generally people pay ahead of time for a package of sessions. So if they cancel late, then they forfeit the session, and that's just how it is. I've given leeway to people. I know a lot of people haven't. You want to try not to because you don't want people to take advantage of that, and people will. Now, the one thing I do add is it works both ways. So if I'm going to charge, if you're a client of mine and you cancel 2 hours ahead of a session and I charge you for the session, if I do the same thing, I owe you. You know, it's not. It's got to work. For me, it's got to work both ways. Now, some gyms don't have that policy typically, but I try to do that. To be fair, it's like if I'm going to charge you whatever I charge you for your session, you know, and you don't show up, you're going to feel, to some extent, you're going to feel like, well, that sucks. I just threw away this money, even though, you know, that's part of the deal. So I offer the same thing. You know, if I ever cancel.
Now, what about that client who just wants more of you?
Oh, God.
Like, they're always texting. They expect you to answer their stuff. They expect you maybe to cancel other sessions in order to do them. They expect you to bend to their schedule. They're always wanting something more. How do you deal with them? And is it okay to just say, I don't think I'm the right person for you?
I know some people who the way they approach it is like, when you're paying for my time. So when I'm on the clock when I'm with you, but if you're not paying for my time, it's not, you know, unless it's scheduling, like I'm not working for you. That's their attitude, and that's harsh. But I kind of like that approach because it's it sets the line. Like if you want me to do work for you, you're paying, you know, then you got to pay me for it. Otherwise, you know, I'm a little different. Like I'll do extra stuff for people. Like I do when I do like programs. I'm not going to do it while you're working with me. I'm going to do it on my own. But you will get people who ask. You know, I offer a lot of I offer, you know, to do extra stuff for people when, you know, like I said, programming.
And I think that's a good thing, like to be available.
Yeah, and I'm
people.
available. But there are some people that will try to take advantage of it. And I had a couple, you know, people that really tried to push. And like there's one guy who, you know, I forget if we've talked about it in the podcast, but basically was a guy, and I won't go too deep into it. I believe we talked about it. But basically, he was working with me for a while, and he was very demanding from the beginning. He would want me to like video him doing exercise, like not just send him a program, but video the stuff, and then email it to him. And then he's like, well, you know, my brother's a trainer and he's out in California. Let's get on a conference call because I want him to talk to you about the program, and he wanted to make some changes. And I was like, no, like I drew it, like that was my line in the sand. It's like I'm not doing this. I'm not gonna get on a conference call. Like that wasn't part of the initial kind of quote contract, you know, that if those are the initial conditions, I could have made a decision, but I'm not gonna, you know, and I also just didn't like the guy, and he was just so demanding and kind of rude that I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna do it. And then he's like, well, you have to, you know, and I'm like, no, I don't. And he's like, well, and then he went to my manager at that place, and my manager was like, no, you don't have to do that. And I was like, and he's like, well, then I don't think we're gonna be able to work together if you can't talk to my brother. And I was like, okay, fine. So he, you know, it was this kind of stalemate where he thought or a staring contest where he thought I was going to blank, and I was like, no, if you don't want to work with me,
oftentimes that's just with people's personal egos.
He was the type of person that gets his way. So in this situation, you know, it was like he was going to get his way, and I wasn't, you know, I didn't want him as a client. I didn't care enough to, you know, I didn't like him as a person, and again, I'm stubborn, and I don't need any one piece of business right now. I'm lucky or fortunate in that way. So it's like, all right, well, not gonna happen. So he went to the gym, he got his refund, and that was that. Like I wasn't gonna keep, you know, I wasn't gonna have this conference call. So I forget how we got into that. What was the question? Or
well, it's just now we were sort of talking about dealing with clients, you know,
scheduling,
dealing with people that make demands, unreasonable demands.
So I think you do have to find there is a line.
Sort of standing up for yourself.
That's a good question, a really good question. I think for you as a trainer, if you're getting into it, you kind of have to think, where is my line? Like, do I say do I set a hard line? Like, I'm not working for you unless, you know, we're on that hour. You know, if it's on that hour, I'll do the extra work for you. I knew one guy he stopped all of his sessions short 5 minutes so he could do all of that kind of administrative work or whatever you need to do for the client. Like, well, that's the time I'm going to spend working on your stuff. Again, it's you have to figure out what's going to work for you, but be aware of it, that people, if you give too much, there are some people who are going to take as much as they possibly can. So you just kind of have to be careful. You know, you have to be careful with that. And then there was one other tip that I had, which was, you know, I guess this is another thing you'll hear a lot, but it really does work. You know, find a niche, find something that works for you. So, you know, but don't be beholden to that.
Sure.
So it's like, you know, yeah, your focus might be basketball, and you can focus on that niche, but don't isolate yourself to just that thing. You do still want to be a bit of a jack of all trades because there's so many potential clients. But if you find something that works for you, that could be your thing. Now, I was going to say when I started, the two things that worked for me, the first thing was kind of planting seeds. That was long term. Short term, what worked for me was just being completely different. Like I would just do, I think, again, I've talked about this before, I just do whatever random weird exercise I could think of to get attention. And that through some people
worked for you.
It worked for me. I got a lot of business initially because people were like, "Oh, that looks weird. That looks interesting. I want to do that." And then people who weren't interested in that weren't interested. But I was able to kind of build my own thing because I was the trainer doing weird exercises. So now obviously over years I've built I'm more than just the weird exercise guy. But initially that worked. So when you're starting, if you can build a niche or be different or find something that you have or something you offer that doesn't work for other people, then that's great. There's a woman at where I work who is doesn't fit the mold of what you would think of as a trainer. It's a little bit older, not the fitness model type body, just doesn't fit what you would think of as a trainer, but she works really well with older adults. Like she just works well, and that's her niche, and it works. And she has other clients, but like she's got that market cornered. Like if you're an older person at the gym, you're probably working with her, and it fits for her. And she was a person who's transitioned from a career later in life, so it works really, really well. So you find what works for you, and you go with it. So those are kind of tips that you're not going to hear during your personal trainer certification exam, but it will help you get very far. One other thing is patience. It's going to take a while for most people. Very few people get into personal training and are as busy as they want to be right away. So if you really,
or in any career.
But if you really want to get into personal training, if it's like, I want to get into it, this is the career I'm going to go for it. You have to go for it with it in mind that for 6 months to a year, you're not going to be as busy as you want. So whether it's, if you're transitioning careers, I would say have enough money, that you can get by for the next few years or for the next year or 6 months to a year without struggling too much. Because if you get into fitness and you're expecting to make a real full-time living salary off of it, it's going to be really hard. Some people it'll work. I've seen people who get into it and right away they're good. But that majority of people, that's not going to be the case. It's going to take 6 months to a year. So whether you have an alternate living situation, maybe you live with your parents or live with a spouse that can cover it, you've got to find a way to spend the next 6 to 8 months not earning all that much money while you build your business. But if you have the patience to see that through it, and you plant seeds and you kind of follow the rules, like, you can be very successful. It's just that that's the mistake that people make. People see that I've got a friend that's a trainer, he makes a lot of money, or this person's doing really well. That looks like an easy job. And there's parts of it that are easy. There are parts of it that are very, very hard. But if you see that person who's doing well, they probably struggled a very long time until they were able to establish themselves. So you got to keep that in mind too if you're getting into training. So,
all right. Well, I think that's some great information. Any questions that you might have, refer them to Ryan. You can bombard him as much as you want.
Bombard me with questions, and I'll try to answer them as long as you don't take advantage of my time. So anyway, we got the exercise of the week this week, and it is my favorite exercise, the burpee. So again, as usual, we're going to be posting these exercises of the weeks on Instagram. So it'll be up on Instagram at @the_gymwits. And you see the pictures, but I think it's just a dynamic exercise because obviously it's great cardio, and it's an exercise that can be progressed in a million different ways. And I've just found that for my own conditioning and training, it's like the most effective exercise for me. So like in addition to all my, all the kickboxing and everything else, and now that I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like that's all great. But like the burpees are the best complement to all that stuff. And again, it's an exercise that you can add tons of different variations to it. You make it harder, make it easier, progress, regress. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. And I'm going to put you on the spot. So in addition to exercise of the week, we're going to do song of the week for fit exercising. So I'm putting you on the spot. What's a good song to exercise to? And we will put a link to that on Spotify.
Good. You're asking.
I know you don't listen to music.
That's the whole thing. You're asking perhaps the worst
musician
person to exercise, because I'm gonna go for some some weird randomness.
What would you exercise to?
What would I
Yeah,
exercise
if you had to listen to music.
to?
Justin doesn't listen to music when he exercises. He hates listening to music when he exercises. But what would you listen to? Come back to it next week.
For now, I'm feeling something heavier and a little classic.
Okay.
Right now, I am going to listen to Walk by Pantera
That's a good one.
from 1991 or 92.
Yeah, that's a
Good
that,
record.
You know what? That was one of when I started exercising. That was probably one of my go-to songs. I was, like Pantera
I'll
is
do
probably
something modern next
if you
time.
want to do like a a metal like heavy something to get out aggression. I don't think that there's any band better than Pantera as far as music to listen to.
It's heavy, but still musical enough. for
Yeah,
me to
musical
listen to.
enough. It's heavy. It's got a good rhythm. Good. Yeah. It's okay. Good.
Very
Good one.
rhythmic,
Okay.
yeah.
So we'll put that. we'll put a link to that on Spotify. We're also on
Dimebag,
Spotify.
R.I.P.
But no, it's a good call. So do your burpees listening to Pantera.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's it. All of our stuff, as usual, is on thegymwits.com. That's where all of our social media. You can find everything. Find the podcast. We're all over on Spotify, on iTunes, Stitcher, all that good stuff. Google Play Music. So we have the app. So if you have iOS, download the app, and that's it. All right. So Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, aka Chef Sonic.
We are the Gymwits.